Hello and welcome to another episode of Custodes Central. We've got quite a long one here today, and we're going to do a bit of a deep dive into the mirror match of Custodes on Custodes violence. There are a few surprising conclusions in here. Might not be surprising to you, but I think from the games that I've played, the Custodes mirror match is the most common matchup that I've played. It's not that surprising, I suppose, because Custodes is a very common faction that people like to play, and from what I've seen, I think a lot of people are actually playing the matchup wrong. They're far too scared to initiate combat, and they're basically just waiting for the other person to start a charge. And very often, actually, charging is correct. But this is very much going to depend on which turn it is, how much CP they have, and who is the leader that's attached to the unit. So let's have a look through this, right? So what are people often getting wrong, right? And they think, it's just a staring contest, nobody can charge. It's just not true. There are a couple of circumstances where you should absolutely make the charge, and you start putting them under immense pressure. You start forcing them to spend CP where they didn't want to spend CP, whereas if you just stood there shooting at them with spears, it doesn't really do anything. And very often they can have much more OC than you on the point, where shooting at them basically doesn't do anything. It just allows them to rack up points and CP. The game is decided by who goes first. I would say, depending on your list, this may actually be true sometimes. If your list comprises of 3 bricks of 10 Guardians, you've got Trajann, Shield Captain, with a Caladius behind it, and some exaction squads, and you go first, and you roll good on your advance rolls, it probably is very, very hard for your opponent to recover from something like that. But to be honest, most lists don't look quite like that. Usually they don't have double Shield Captain. Or they don't usually have triple bricks. Some people are running triple bricks, but I think most people are running, some people have some Caladius, some people have some 4-man squads, 5-man squads of Guardians, some people have some Wardens, etc. Or that it's a very boring matchup. I completely disagree with this. I think this is one of the most interesting and complicated matchups in 40k because there is so much to think about. There are so many breakpoints in the game. In shooting and in combat, because basically every single model matters, and there's a lot to think about in terms of CP management, how combat's going to go, all the kind of branches that your opponent may take in terms of they might actually decide to heroic here, they might not pop the strat that you were expecting them to pop, etc. So again, this is somewhere where I see quite a few opponents make a bunch of mistakes. And those mistakes typically are they pass up on a really clear opportunity to charge something, and they don't. And basically, especially when you go second, you have to take these opportunities that your opponent gives you to initiate a charge, because otherwise they start racking up CP while they're on the point. And once they have a lot of CP, it can be very, very difficult to actually initiate a charge at all, because the real takeaway from the video is that if they can only fight first and you can AGA, as long as the matchups are kind of even, you actually win, right? The thing that you can't really do is charge into something that fights first and has AGA. But you'll see in the first turn of the game, the maximum CP that they're going to have if you go second is 3 CP, right? They get 1 per turn, plus 1 from the discard from their secondary objectives. So this is like your one opportunity to stress test their list, basically, right? So what are some other factors in the mirror? What are list factors in the mirror, right? Basically, do you have Trajann or not, and how do you play him with his damage reduction, for example, right? You should definitely, agree this with your opponent before the game starts. Guardians, do you run 9 or 10 bricks, and how many of them do you have? The more you have, the more advantageous it is for you in the matchup, right? Same with Trajann. If you have Trajann, it's good for you. If you don't have Trajann, it's bad for you. Shield Captains, do you have them for a start? And do you have multiple of them? Basically, in the matchup, Shield Captains are way more valuable than Blade Champions. Obviously, in a lot of other matchups, Blade Champions are really good for mobility, initiating charges, etc. In the mirror match, they're not very good at all. And the reason is, you just need stratagems, and your Shield Captain giving you access to free stratagems is massive in the matchup. Do you have a Caladius? Reign of Confusion is extremely big here in the mirror, right? If you have a Caladius and your opponent doesn't, and you get to Vex their AGA, they're probably done, right? Depending on how early you can get this off, right? It's horrific your opponent has a Caladius and you don't, right? Because your CP management is going out the window compared to theirs. Do you have a Vindicare Assassin? Now this is a bit more niche. I think, like, I still like my Vindicare a lot. I think a lot of people are moving towards the Eversaw instead of the Vindicare. I don't disagree with that necessarily. I think the Eversaw in general has higher value than the Vindicare. I just think in some matchups the Vindicare just can be immediately game winning. And this is one of them, right? Because if you have a Vindicare and your opponent doesn't, and you just trigger a battle shock on something, on one of their units that they thought was going to get to fight first, and pop AGA, and actually they just get deleted, that's just game, right? So this is one of these instances where having a Vindicare is massive, right? Do you have Caladius? Now, if you have Caladius and your opponent doesn't, obviously your shooting is going to be better than theirs, but their objective control and melee is going to be way better than yours. So you're going to have to try and slow down the pace of the game, right? You're going to have to try and do a lot of shooting before you start initiating into combat. And probably you should start being a bit creative with your Caladius and get them involved in some charges where they start basting a few models here and there. Not enough so that they'll die in combat, hopefully, but enough so that they can't allocate enough attacks to the target that they actually want to get to. Do you have Ceaseless Hunter? This is really good to control engagements and forcing your opponent to use fight fast. Right? You can they touch an objective and you just failed with your advance, for example. You can get onto the objective, right? That can be your point. You've got all the rerolls, etc. They want to move to try and charge you, and you don't want to deal with that because you're not on an objective, or you just don't want to deal with it in general because you don't have enough CP. You can just move away, right? They might fail their charge. Veiled Blade. Veiled Blade is okay in the matchup because this allows you to manipulate your objective control, and if you have it on a Blade champion with a Guardian squad, and you happen to have 4 rerolls, this now gets you over the threshold where you're quite likely to kill a character with Epic Challenge. You don't use the precision profile, you just use Epic Challenge. You just pay the CP for it, you get your 7 swings, and you reroll your wounds, right? And you just go ham, and on average, you kill them. Now, if you can kill an opponent shield captain, that's really, really big. Right. Obviously, they would have got all their Custodes off, they would have got their strats off before that happens, because that all happened at the start of the phase. But it does mean for future turns, they don't get to use the same stuff. They don't get access to the stratagems in future battle rounds, etc. So this is actually pretty big. What are some game factors in the mirror? And I think the biggest one probably is CP management. I'm probably strongly advocating an early, especially in turn 1, unless you get a really, really good draw, right, and you're going to score 10, I think probably think really, really hard about discarding one secondary card in battle round 1. And we'll talk about that later on. Deciding how you're going to deploy, right? If you think your army would struggle to fight on 3 fronts against your opponent's list, just don't do it. Right? If there's 3 objectives in no man's land, just fight for 2 of them. Let them have one. Right? They probably, it depends how they deploy, who has enough drops, the order in which you do it, etc. But it may be that they spend 300, 400, 500 points to control an objective that you're not even contesting. That's great for you, right? Especially if you have something like a Caladius or some exaction squads or an Allarus squad that can try and steal it if they leave that objective. They might stick here, but you can just go back and steal it. Right? It might take you a turn or 2, but you can do it. And in that time, while they're leaving that objective, they've given you what I call a temporary localized superiority of force, right? And this concept is just everything in 40k, right? This is always what you're trying to do. You're always trying to create localized superiority of force so you can crush your opponent and they can't really hit you back that much. And this is why, I say stuff like indirect is so strong, long range shooting is so strong, where, there isn't enough line of sight breaking terrain. Right? Because shooting and indirect, they have such long ranges that they can create this localized superiority of force wherever they want. Okay. Setting up multiple charges and heroic interventions. Right, multiple charges, this is good because sometimes you can't take a fight one-on-one, and this is very often going to happen where they're going to fight first. So you're going to have to, force them to spread the pain. Some people are good at splitting their attacks. Some people are not so good at splitting attacks. Basically, you're just giving your opponent to make some mistakes. Or, it's so you can get your ablative wounds in from 2 squads, and then, you know, your leaders get to do some attacks depending on which they are. Trajan's like a really good one here for, you know, having ablative wounds and then just smashing with his 12 attacks. Heroic interventions is also a really big one, because remember, you can heroic intervention on your opponent's turn and then fight first. This can catch people by surprise. Also keep in mind your blade champion can do it for free. So yeah, and then also knowing when to initiate charges, and this is the big one, big part of the video here. Typically you want to be charging with overwhelming superiority if you can, and focus down units to make the fights as unfair as possible where you are fighting, right? And, you know, where you're not fighting, you know, this goes back to kind of deployment. Let them have an objective. If your army isn't built to fight on 3 fronts, don't fight on 3 fronts, just fight on 2, and have your superiority in the 2 objectives that you're fighting for, and just leave, you know, they've wasted 300, 400, 500 points just holding that point. Just let them have it for a turn or 2. It's not too bad. And also, don't do chip damage everywhere. Just try and focus fire, especially you're shooting, right? Focus fire the unit that you're probably going to charge in that turn. And you definitely can make way more charges than I think the majority of you think that you can make. And then just, you know, going back to basics in terms of fight first as a stratagem or an ability. You know, even numbers of charges is good, odd numbers of charges is bad, right? The reason is if you make 2 charges, you know, they can fight first somewhere, but then you get your priority activation on the next one. If you do 3, they fight first, you get your activation, and then on the 3rd one they can just they can either fight first again with another unit, with something like a shield captain, or they can do something like the combat interrupt, and then again that's bad for you. That's not to say one charge is necessarily bad, but you have to understand what that looks like at the outcome of the charge, and we'll talk about that further down the slides. And a big one, I think, is using stuff like walls, containers, and sacrificial units to manipulate the attacks that models can get. And this goes back to one of my earlier videos about being really, really careful with the spacing of your models. You know, who's declared to be basing who within your own squad, right? And don't spread out too much, because once you spread out too much, you may find that you get charged by a unit, and half your unit can't actually, you know, allocate their attacks in, right? When we talk about sacrificial units, you could have something like a prosecutor squad, exaction squad, could even be like an assassin, right? Who comes in and makes a charge as part of a multi-charge, and they base a bunch of your models. And now they don't get to pile in where they want, right? They don't get to allocate the attacks where they want to, right? Even something like a lone Allarus unit, just basing Trajann, right? If Trajan's not basing another one of his, another model in his unit that is, you know, is basing one of your units, Trajann can't fight against that squad, right? He has to kill this Allarus, which is like, you should be fine with that, right? Makes it very inefficient for them. So using walls, containers, and sacrificial units is a really good way of controlling how many units from the other opponent can get to participate in the fight. And you have to be mindful of that yourself, right? So don't position your units in like a weird way. This particularly happens if you have something like a Vindicare and they're trying to hide their character, like, you know, they're trying to hide Trajann or their shield captain, etc. Shield captain doesn't matter so much, but, you know, if they're trying to hide like a blade champion, not having them in the fight is actually pretty significant, because that's a significant combat unit. So let's look at some shooting first of all. So what will a Caladius do on average, right? We're just looking at the blaze gun. Well, they're shooting at infantry. It's got 4 shots. They're hitting on 2s. So you're getting 3.33 hits, right? And you're getting, versus, you know, T6, 35 out of 36, because you're on 2s rerolling to wound, right? And on Wardens or Allarus, right, they're either T7 versus strength 12, or they're T6 and -1 to wound because you're higher strength and toughness. It's on 3s rerolling. So either way, you can still get good conversions. The Lastrum is whatever, it's just kind of incidental piddly shooting, basically. But the conclusion is you're going to kill about 1.5 models per Caladius shooting. But this is very, very swingy, because you don't have that many shots, and they don't have that many 4-ups to make, right? So, you know, you might kill nothing, you might kill 3 guys. It's pretty swingy. But the thing to remember is that on average, you're about to kill 1.5. You know, if you're shooting into you know, Allarus, you could roll very poorly on your damage and then you don't quite kill it with your blaze cannon shot, or if you were shooting at Wardens and for whatever bizarre reason they decide to pop their feel no pain in the shooting phase, you might not kill a model. But basically what you're looking at is in the region of, you know, you pay 215 points for a Caladius, and you're going to kill about, you know, 90 to 100 points worth of no, less than that, because it's only 1.5, like 80 points of model, 75 points of model, something like that. So you have to realize this is very bad efficiency for your Caladius. It can be good to, you know, screen out your backfield, hold your home objective while still being able to participate in the fight, etc. But you're not going to get that massive output with a Caladius shooting into your opponent unless they roll badly, basically. So with this, you know, if this is in your list, you want to be thinking, how do I slow down the pace of the game so you get more turns of value out of your shooting? You know, exploit your shooting advantage and try and make it so your opponent doesn't want to start initiate combats, basically. Let's look at some spear and sentinel blade shooting now, and this is because there's so much of it in the game, right? So, you know, each spear or sentinel, obviously the sentinel blades have lower range. You've got 2 shots, you're hitting on 2s, you got 1.66 repeating hits per, right? And these are just some numbers that, you know, I've run the math already. You should just basically try and memorize some of this, right? Sounds awkward, right? But basically 6 wardens shooting at something that's saving on a 2-up, they're gonna fail half a save. So in your mind you can just think 6 wardens shooting is basically nothing, right? It's like 1 damage basically. The big takeaways here though are if you can make them save on a 3 instead of a 2, right? Because you remember your guns are AP1, you get 100% increase in damage. And if you can get full rerolls versus no rerolls or, you know, rerolling ones, it's about a 50% increase, right? So from worst case scenario to best case scenario is about a 6-fold difference, right? Because if you can get full rerolls and they're saving on 3s, versus you don't get rerolls, you only get reroll 1s, and they're saving on 2s. Because of the multiplicative factor, there's a really massive difference there to be made. So very often I see people just, you know, they start the game and they think, I have to get my double shots off before I lose a guy, right? That's the wrong way of thinking about it. It's perfectly okay to lose a guy, even 2 guys, right? And your opponent might have double shot and you've lost a guy and you think, oh no, I need to immediately use my double shoot before it's gone. It's not always the case, right? If you think you might have another turn where you get to shoot, and that turn of shooting is going to be way more efficient, especially if you can catch them out of cover, so they're saving on a 3, hold your double shot. It can be really important. And this also feeds back into the importance of shooting your target for that, you know, killing a model here and there can swing combats massively on average. There is a lot of variance in the combat math. It's a dice game, but being able to hold your double shots is really important. So here I've worked, you know, you can see this is what double shooting 10 guys looks like rerolling 1s, and 10 guys double shooting looks like when they're rerolling everything to wound. And you can see if you get to double shoot rerolling all wounds and they're saving on 3s, they're getting 6 unsaved. They're failing 6 armor saves. It's like 12 damage. It's a lot. It's way more than people think it is. So you can't just stand in the open and think the spear shooting doesn't matter, because it does. Okay. Let's look at some Balistus shooting. This is only on the Allarus. So here we've got Blast 0, where they've got, you know, 0 to 4 model, 1 to 4 models, Blast 1 and Blast 2 basically. You know, this is 5 to 9 and this is 10 plus. And you know, typically, let's say your squads of Allarus are 5. So basically, if you've got a squad of 5 Balistus, 5 Allarus shooting their Balistus, right, into a massive squad, you're going to get about 4 wounds through, right? If they're saving on 3s, and you get about 2 through if they're saving on 2s, right? Again, it's not that much damage, but this chip damage does matter when you're just trying to remove 1 or 2 models. And in particular, even if you don't kill models outright, stacking these little wounds here and there will matter for when you're in combat, right? Where you're just trying to kill models, because there are definitely breakpoints in the combat. So I think this is like a nice screen that you can kind of, I think this is probably the good screen to try and memorize. Maybe not memorize, you could bookmark it or something. So, you know, 6 warden shooting into 2+ save, you're going to take like a wound off, right? If they're shooting into 3+ saves, you're going to take about 2 wounds off. And it's about the same with 5 Guardians rerolling 1s, even though there's one less guy shooting, they reroll 1s. The math works out about the same. It's 1 wound if they're saving on 2s, and 2 wounds if they're saving on 3s. If they're rerolling all, they're getting a 50% increase on that. So now it becomes 1.5 and 3 if they're saving on 3s. Yep. And then Allarus. If you're shooting at a normal size squad, you know, something between 5 and 9 custodians, you're going to take 3 wins off if they're saving on 2s, and 6 wins off if they're saving on 3s. And this is just because you're getting so much value with the blast, basically. So you can see 5 Guardian shooting, you know, 4 times this is 10 shooting twice, 12 wins. It's not insignificant. It's definitely not insignificant. So what am I supposed to learn here, basically? Like, I know shooting stuff that's not in cover is better than shooting stuff that's not in cover, and having rerolls is better than not having rerolls, right? And this is to do with actually your movement phase. So when you move out in your turn, try and keep at least one model out of line of sight to where your opponent could move to, so that you can have at least a model that can take saves on 2s, right? And this goes back to core rules. So each time a ranged attack is allocated to a model, if that model is either wholly within a terrain feature, or it's not fully visible to every model in the attacking unit because of the terrain feature, for example, like a ruin, you know, the ruin outline on the ground. Basically, if every model in your opponent's unit can't draw line of sight to every part of your model that wants to get a cover save, that model gets a cover save, right? So that model has a benefit of cover against that attack. So even if you've got a squad of 10 guys, just have 2 kind of in an awkward spot where not all models in your opponent's unit can draw line of sight to all parts of that model. And those 2 models can take a cover save. And you're probably going to be saving on 2s, and you probably only need 2 models to be saving on 2s. So we'll cut to a TTS video on that in a bit. And the reason is, you know, basically, again, this goes back to the efficiency of shooting, right? AP1. If you get the cover save, you just reduce their efficiency by 50%. So obviously, yeah, it's really obvious. Get a cover save if you can. Like, it's not rocket science, but we'll cut to a TTS video so you can see kind of an example case of one movement where, you know, you might consider it a normal movement, and another movement which is basically the same, slightly different, but infinitely superior. And we'll cut to TTS right now. Hello, thanks for joining me on TTS. We're going to do a quick example now of 1 squad versus 1 squad. It's like a toy game example just to make things simpler. So we've got 2 units that are identical on green and pink. So we've got a unit of 9 Guardians, we've got a Vexilla, we've got 2 shields, and we've got a shield captain. And it's the exact same side on the other side. So let's say that green squad goes first, and so the thing that we want to see first of all is, okay, what do I need to roll on my advance to get there? We need a 4, right? So let's say you roll a 4 and you just move your 10 and you want to touch the point. You've got 2 guys on it and you're pretty happy, right? The main thing that you were thinking is, I want to just make sure that I can tag the objective so I have access to fight first, etc. And so you're pretty happy with that. Remember, pink squad is here behind the wall. What are some comments that you could make about the movement from green squad? Right. I think this is not the best that it could have been. And the reason for this is, let's say we move, let's say these guys also roll a 4 in their advance. It's not enough for them to steal the point from you, but they can still get 2 guys onto it as well, right? Let's say they do it like this. In this example, every model in pink squad can see every part of every model in green squad, right? And so probably, let's say this model is the hardest one to see. This is the line, right? It can go, because nobody can see through this, but every model can see that model, and every model can see this model, right? So as a result, green squad is not going to get to save on 2s on any single model in their squad. They're all going to be saving on 3s. So here is not even a terrible position for pink squad to double shoot, because they're saving on 3s. Like, you're not going to see this very often. Now, how could this get even worse? Let's say pink squad had actually rolled a 5 in their advance. So now they get to move an extra inch. Right, now we've got 3 guys into point versus 2 from green. Let's say nobody has these, so some through this example to keep it simple. Now we're getting full rerolls and you saving on 3s. Right? Green squad is going to take on average around 12 wounds. This is pretty bad, right? So how could green have moved slightly better than how they actually did? So let's put them back to where they were exactly. So let's have a look, see. So if we'd moved a bit more carefully, we could have, instead of doing it like this, right? This is 10. This is kind of what we did originally. If we did it better, we could have got 3 guys into the point. So now even if pink squad had rolled a 5 in their advance to get 3 guys into the point, they still don't get 4 rerolls. This is pretty important. Okay. We still get this guy here. I move slightly back. This guy can still go here. But now these Sentinel Blades, they move on this side. Okay, actually let's say this guy moves slightly back for coherency, right? So everybody's still within 2 of 2, but now in this example, these 2 models can't be seen by every model in pink squad, right? Because they need to see all parts of the base. There's no way, right? This is the line. So all of these models here, they can't see. So as a result, and it's the same with this thing here, right? There's a whole bunch of models here that can't see. So as a result, these 2 models get to take a cover save, right? They get to save on 2s versus AP1. So this would have been significant improvement on the movement from green squad. And you can see they still only move 10. You know, the advance roll hasn't changed. They've just moved in a more efficient manner to cover the eventualities of what pink squad may do. From pink's perspective, what could they have done better actually? All right. So they moved 11, so they moved back 11, okay. Here we're still going to move the full 11 to get this here. But now this guy's going to move, it's not this guy, this guy's going to move here. And the purpose of this is to get a cover save during green shooting turn. This guy's going to move here. And the purpose of this is that he wants to be fully on the terrain so he can get a cover save. Same thing here. This guy's just going there to fix coherency. This guy's going there to fix coherency, and let's see. Got 11. So here's incoherency, and like this is fine. Now in this example, after we double shoot, we don't control the point, but they're still getting some cover saves here, because not every model in pink squad can see every model in green squad, right? It's very hard. You know, this guy, for example, can't see them, so these guys at least are getting a cover save. You know, this guy's probably getting a cover save as well from this guy. Failing the condition that every model in pink squad can see every, you know, all parts of every model in green squad, right? So what would happen? Let's say pink double shoots and we kill, let's see, like one guy basically, because they're saving on 2s now. In green's turn, they're going to move up. They're going to control the point. Oops. Like so. And they're going to set up for a charge potentially, right? But they control the point. Now they get the full rerolls. But now for pink, they have 3 models that can take saves on 2+, because they're fully on the terrain feature. So hopefully this is like a quick example of how, you know, you've rolled the same advanced roll, but you've just moved slightly differently to plan for future turns, to set you up in a better spot. So why do we bother to math these things? Now, you might think math is really boring, kind of is, but I think when you're playing a dice game and you want to get really good at the game, you should be doing quite a lot of stats. Well, not so much stats, but you should be trying to create cheat sheets where you can to understand how stuff is going to go. And the reason why we do it is so you can predict likely outcomes in future turns. So you can basically play a turn or 2 ahead, or maybe not turn. Yeah, no, turns instead of battle runs. Like a turn or 2 ahead of what is on the board now to see what the board state is likely to look like, right? And the benefit of kind of doing this math is so that you don't have to play a matchup around 10 times, 20 times to get a feel for what a unit does, right? This takes a long time. You can just math it instead and know, like, okay, this is on average what the unit is supposed to do. Obviously, there's going to be some variance, but you'll know and you'll feel comfortable knowing that this is the likely outcome. Now, this is good because the aim when you play and practice is to get as good as better at the game as fast as you can without wasting a bunch of time on stuff like, what the average damage outcome is supposed to be. This is what I'd call like a basic thing, instead of, there are way more important lessons that you can learn from your games, like CP management, movement, tagging models, stuff like that you should be focused on in your games, rather than thinking like, oh, actually this unit kills about this many from your opponent list. So when you decide to charge Custodes, you need to determine how many defenders will get to attack first, but this is going to be affected after you shoot. So this is, again, goes back to the importance of potentially holding off on your double shooting sometimes with your squads, because this will significantly affect the combat math, right? 1 or 2 extra guys can make all the difference in the world, because the breakpoints where it becomes efficient to actually start a charge versus not, they're pretty close. So let's have a look at a typical scenario, right? And this is battle round 1, right? Turn 1, you go first. The main thing you want to be doing is, try and roll good on your advances so you can tag the primaries. But also, when you're doing that movement, try and get at least a person that's going to have a cover save from where your opponent might move to in their turn 1, right? Within battle round 1, right? Or if you go second, you have to decide, are there any charges that you could initiate, and do you want to make those charges, right? And before you make that decision, you need to think, who can get in position to shoot what, and at what point can I make the charge? Would it be good to make the charge? Now, there's still a lot of variance here, so you could make a charge that is mathematically sound. They might roll good, you might roll bad, and you think, oh, that was stupid, I shouldn't have charged. That's true, that could definitely happen, right? But over the large number of games that you play, well, to be honest, people probably are never playing that many games to get to what the average is supposed to be, but you get the idea. You're supposed to follow the math basically in a dice game. So within battle round 1, I strongly urge you to consider dropping a secondary in battle round 1, right? And this is so at the start of battle round 2, you have 4 CP that you will have accumulated, right? Because you'll accumulate 2 in battle round 1, you'll get another CP for the first turn of battle round 2, plus you now have this 1 CP from the discard, right? And this is a crucial breakpoint again. This will give you 4 CP that you could have spent in total up to the start of battle round 2. And one of them will be for fight first or AGA. And having 4 in the first round of battle round 2 means you have one of those again. If your opponent has that and you don't, that can be game losing. Or it might not be game losing, but it can put you at a significant disadvantage because you might now lose a critical unit, or your critical unit might take terrible damage, right? So in my opinion, I think conserving army is way more important in the mirror than accumulating early points, right? You could score a bunch of points, you could expose your army to a bunch of stuff and you could get like a massive lead in points turn 1, turn 2. I don't think it matters. If you lose your army, you lose the game, right? Because you can't score turns 3, 4, 5 because you have no army left. So I think conserving your army is more important. How do you conserve your army? You have CP, and I think discarding 1 turn 1 battle round 1 is very important actually. So let's look at a typical TTS example of turn 1, because you get very many deployments where their objective is no man's land. You're not too far away from each other. Person who's gone first, they're probably advancing. When they're advancing, they might be trying to be, well, it's not necessarily greedy, but they might be trying to get as many models into the point as possible for objective control to stop you getting rerolls, or they might just be trying to tow it and make the charge harder for you. But this happens in a lot of deployments where you're actually very close to each other and you have the option of making charges if you want to do so, and they're not that bad for charges. So this is just a quick little example on TTS where, for example, let's say red player goes first, they go, they make their advance, and let's say they want to move onto the point as much as they can so they have all the OC. And then, you've got your unit of Wardens here. Let's make this not so awkward. Right, some of them can see, some of them can't. And you're debating whether you can make this charge or not. Obviously, you should do your shooting, take off a few incidental wounds, but you'd be charging into fight first. And this is one of these circumstances where, if you've done the math already, you can feel pretty comfortable about making this charge. Basically, they're going to use their CP to fight first. In this case, we've actually got a shield captain, so we can just pop AGA for free. And what happens is they get to fight first, but we take damage reduction. And in this particular case, we have Fiona Pain on top. They do very little to us. They don't have the CP to use fight first and AGA, and as a result, they take full damage from our swings back, and we basically just crush them in the exchange. But we'll look through some more examples further down the slides. Now, what we're going to talk about is kind of what Battle Round 1 scenarios might present themselves to you. After that, because there's so much variance involved, you could have 3 models versus 5 models and stuff like that. There's so many permutations, you could have different leaders, you could have different enhancements that change, etc. That's too much to kind of go through. For that, you really have to get the experience in and go by feel, or get really fast at doing math in your head. But I think within Battle Round 1 going second, you get a lot of menu choices that you can choose to go through or not go through. So we're gonna give you a cheat sheet at the end here. So question, can you charge 5 guard that are led by a blade champion with your 5 guard and a blade champion, right? And remember, we're in Battle Round 1, so they'll only have 2 CP, maximum 3 by the time in your turn going second Battle Round 1, right? So they're going to have 2 or 3 CP. As a result, they can only fight first. They can't AGA on top. So assuming, the normal loadout, they've got 4 spears and a Vex, they go first. They're not controlling the point because probably, you've got the same number of models, you should have the same OC, blah, blah, blah. But the importantly, right, they haven't shot you because you should have null deployed, but you get to shoot before charging. So the cards you're going to pick because they're fighting first should be -1 to be hits, and you should be popping AGA. If you're not popping AGA, you should not be doing this charge. In general, you should not be charging anything in a Custodes mirror if you're not popping -1 damage, unless their unit is just like very small and you're massive, basically. But that's not going to happen too much. So what happens? They hit you with 20 spears, they reroll 1s to wound, and you're basically going to fail like 6.5 of them with -1 damage. It's like 6.5 damage. The Misericordia is going to get you for just under a wound. The Victor's Blade is going to get you for about 2.2 wounds, right? So what's the net result of that is you're going to lose your shield guy and you're going to lose 2 spears, right? Your shooting may or may not have killed a guy. They've probably taken it on the Vex and he might have like 1 or 2 wounds left, right? But that doesn't matter because you've lost 3 guys. And you think, that's awful. Why did I do that? Now, in return, your Blade Champion and your 2 spears hit back, right? You were hitting on basically 2+ again. They rolled the sustained, you did the -1, so they were hitting on 2s. You don't get to do anything either because you've also got a Blade Champion, you hit on 2s. And you also reroll 1s because you're not going to control the point because you took casualties first. You're going to get 3.3 unsaved through, but yours are 2 damage each because they don't have CP to AGA, right? And your Victus is going to do the same as them, right? You're going to get 1.2 unsaved through, but these are 3 damage each, right? What's the outcome of this? Because you've chipped a bit of damage with your shooting, you are now killing 3 to 4 models. You've actually killed more than them. You've ended up favourable in the trade, and unless they're willing to commit another unit to charge you, or they're willing to commit CP to fight first at the start of Battle Round 2, because you're in an existing combat and it's going to be their turn, within this combat, your unit is going to have priority. So you've come out of the trade favorably, and you're coming out with initiative. Now, what they could do is they could spend CP to bring a model back, and then it's like more up in the air. But again, still, you're going to attack first. So, still not even that bad. So the thing that I want to get in your head is you've won because when they just fight first and they don't AGA, and you AGA, you can very often come out favorably in the trade, even though they're fighting first. Right? And you'll see this over and over and over again in the examples. So, what if you had a shield captain instead of a blade champion? You're still going to lose the same number of guys because you know, you're doing the -1 to be hit cutter. But now when you strike back, you get sustained, lethal, whatever, right? It doesn't matter that much. You're going to lose you're going to kill 3 to 4 models either way, right? You might kill 4 models if you do the once per game or 3 cutters in one go, but you're still positive in the trade. Basically, even though you don't have a 3 damage guy, you know, you're buffing your other people to do the damage. And in addition, in next round, because it's a new battle round, you now get access to a free strat again. So if you really wanted to push the issue to stop them fighting first in their turn, because they could still do that if they want, you could decide to pop fight first for free with your shield captain, or you could do AGA. And again, this is advantageous. It shows the power of the shield captain in the matchup. What if you charge with 9 or 10? Now, to be honest, like, you can see the math on the screen, but this is like an example of what I call overwhelming advantage. Now, it's like if you double shoot them, you're gonna take, you know, you're gonna kill a model. You might even kill 2 models depending on whether they get in the cover save or not. But you know, they're gonna whack you. You're gonna lose like 2 or 3 guys because you're probably gonna have more shields in a 9-10 squad than a 5-man squad. But as long as you pop the AGA, you know, by the time you swing back, you've got enough models left and they haven't got AGA, you're just gonna wipe their unit. They're just dead. So again, this is still a good trade. It's a very good trade for you. This is why the 9-10 man bricks are very strong in the matchup. What if instead you have 5 Allarus? Now, they have decent shooting, so a lot is going to turn on whether you put them on, whether they were saving on 2s or 3s. It's going to have to do with their positioning. Did they leave a guy behind to get a cover save, etc. But you're probably not going to, they're probably going to control the objective, because if they're smart, they'll leave their Vax alive, basically, so that they can get the full rear rolls versus you. So if you shoot them with the saving on 2s, you're probably going to take 3 wounds off them. Now, when they hit you, they're going to do about 7.3 wounds to you, so you're almost certainly going to lose a guy. You might even lose 2 guys, right? Let's have a look at what happens if you lose 2 guys versus lose 1 guy. If you lose 2 guys, because of you shooting, you've set 1 up for a near kill. You're going to kill about 3 models in return. It's not great. It's not great. It's perfectly fine, right? As long as you pop the AGA, it's still okay. If you happen to shoot them when they're saving on 3s, you're going to do well out of the trade, because you will have killed more models. There would have been less of them to hit you first, which means you have more guys left to swing at full damage, right? If they only killed 1 of your guys, which can happen also quite a lot, you're going to have 4 guys swinging back, and you're going to kill about 4 guys. If you shot them at net save 3 beforehand, you're crushing in this matchup, right? So you can see 5 guard and a BC charging into 5 guard and a BC. Just do it, as long as you're willing to pop the AGA. Same thing with the 5 Allarus. As long as you're shooting them beforehand, just do it. What if you had 6 Wardens? Right? Now, with 6 Wardens, they're when you have 6 Wardens and they've got 5 Guardians, they're probably not controlling the point at the time that they activate fight first. You know, you're going to shoot them a bit, it's not going to do very much. But you're probably going to have 80 in OC, they're probably going to have 50 in OC. It depends a little bit on, you know, where the positions landed on the objectives, etc. But, you know, how it really works is, if you don't pop Feel No Pain, but you do still pop AGA, you're going to take about 8 wounds. So you're going to lose 2 guys, maybe 3 guys, right? But if you pop Feel No Pain on top of AGA, you now only lose one guy, even though they fought first. I don't have to talk you through all the math because I think it's a bit boring to talk you through all the steps. What you're really interested in is the conclusions, right? So if you charge 6 Wardens and a, whatever, Blade Champion, Shield Captain, what have you, into their 5 Guardians and a Blade Champion, and you pop Feel No Pain and AGA, you're going to lose about a guy. When your swings back, you're going to kill between 3 to 5 models, depending on how many Wardens are left alive. Plus your Blade Champion's just going to go fully ham on them with flat 3 damage. So this is an example when you come crushingly winning out of the trade. And again, you're going to fight first unless they spend CP to fight first, or they disengage, or they send in another unit to charge you, right? So again, now you're applying CP pressure on your opponent just to stay at parity. Otherwise, you're going to super punish them next turn. So this is a case where, because you're Wardens, you have slightly less damage output than Guardians, but you had Wardens and a BC. The Feel No Pain acts as a pseudo AGA in the matchup, right? Because now you get to do the charge and you get to do damage reduction, right? Whereas they only get to fight first. So even though they hit first, because of the damage reduction, you have enough guys left alive, and then you just hit them back at full damage. And this is just more efficient. What if you had a Shield Captain instead of a BC with your Wardens? You still come out crushing in the trade, right? Because again, you just get, you turn on your sustain, you turn on your lethal. Yeah, you don't have your flat 3 damage anymore, but you just get way more attacks in. You still kill 4 to 5 models. You probably, depending on how many Wardens are left to strike, if you pop the Feel No Pain, you probably kill all their Guardians and their BCs on like 3 wounds or something like that. That's about where it ends up in. So you can see in this case, if you have a chance to charge, 5 Guardians with a Blade Champion and you've got a squad of Wardens, you should definitely do it. If you're not doing it, you're basically making a massive mistake. So let's have a look at how hard does Trajann slap. Trajann does slap very hard. He's going to make your unit ignore weapon skill modifiers, so your opponent's cut off a -1 to be hit, just doesn't matter. Wound modifiers for Wardens, doesn't matter, right? What this means is you basically shouldn't charge into Trajann if Trajann's fighting first, right? But also, you might want to charge with Trajann, because if he has enough ablative wounds and he gets his 12 swings off, that might be good, even though you might take a lot of damage, right? Your opponent might take more damage as a result. So the important thing to do is agree with your opponent in advance whether he ignores -1 damage or not. Now, most Custodes players will play Trajann as he ignores AP reduction, he ignores damage reduction. Some people don't. And this goes back to the rules commentary, which is really unhelpful, and I wish they would FAQ it. Maybe if we're lucky, they'll do it in September. So let's look at his profiles. He gets 6 attacks. He's probably going to get 6 hits if you do sustains. And so basically you can see here, this is with Guardians rerolling 1s, and this is with Guardians rerolling all. He's basically going to get between 2 and 2.5 unsaved through, and they're flat 3, so they're usually dead models. Just be careful the ordering in which you activate Trajann so that you don't, waste this on a guy that has 1 wound left or something like that. And obviously, if you swing 12 times, just double these numbers, right? With Guardians with 4 rerolls, it's like five guys dead by himself. Now, the thing with Trajann is he's also a very good candidate for Epic Challenge to take out your opponent's Shield Captain, or maybe even your opponent's Trajann, if you're swinging 12 times. It is a bit of CP for Epic Challenge, but killing Shield Captains is really, really big. Also, killing opponent's Trajann is really, really big if you happen to swing first, right? Because they've attacked into you. So very often you might actually decide you don't want to use Trajann's fight first ability. You might want to pay the CP and have him slap the hell out of your opponent. This might be better. So what are the summaries on charging 5 Guardians, assuming they don't get 4 rerolls with a BC, right? So basically, as long as they aren't popping AGA with Fight Fast, which they can't do because it's Battle Round 1 and they'll only have a maximum of 3 CP, and you're popping AGA, you can generally charge the unit and do good out of the trade, assuming you shoot them fast. Sometimes you don't even have to shoot them fast, but shooting them fast makes the outcomes more favourable on average. And this also sets you up to apply pressure because you're going to have priority activation in an existing combat. It's going to be their turn, so your unit will get to fight theirs first. So you're going to make them either spend CP to fight first again here, which they might not want to do because there might be another combat that they're more interested in or care more about, or they're going to have to fall back out of combat. They may or may not take a battle shock. They might not be able to do it. They might lose guys doing it. Might lead to you controlling the point. All good things that can happen. Now, if their unit is led by a shield captain instead of a blade champion, you generally shouldn't be charging it, right? And the reason is the shield captain allows them to pop AGA in addition to fight first. So if you're going to do something like that, you're going to need overwhelming force to come out in the trade. So this is like in the region of 9 to 10 bricks, or a unit with Trajann in it that does 12 attacks, right? Because depending on how you play it, Trajann just ignores their -1 damage anyway. Plus 12 attacks go bar. So Trajann counts as a unit that gives you overwhelming force. Now, can you charge 5 Guardians in a Blade Champion if they're having full rerolls for whatever reason? Shouldn't typically happen because you should have your own 5+ leader, or you should have 6+ leader if you've got Wardens. Really only really comes up when you've got Allarus, right? Because you're not usually taking the Vex on the Allarus because it just cripples your combat output too much. But if they did it in such a way that they're covering the point and you can't get all your guys onto the point and they have 4 rerolls, like, you don't want to do this with 5 Guardians in the leader. I don't really care what your leader is because you're going to lose 4 guys. If you lose 4 guys, you don't have enough people left to make the trade favourable, even if they're taking full damage, right? If you've got a squad of 9 or you've got Trajann in your squads and you're willing to pop 12 attacks, like, yes, it's fine. You're going to take a bunch of damage, but you're probably going to wipe them in return, so that's fine. It's a favourable trade. With 5 Allarus, you're going to lose about 2.5 guys. Sometimes you lose 2, sometimes you lose 3. If you lose 2, it's kind of okay. If you lose 3, it's really not okay, because now this is not a combat that you're probably going to be winning. Not only that, they're going to outsee you on the point anyway, so it's like you're losing models, you're in unfavourable trade, and you're also not even contesting the objective, because they're going to res a guy before you if they need to, and they're going to have the 4 rerolls. So this is not really good. If you have 6 Wardens and a leader, if you don't want to pop Feel No Pain, you're going to lose 3 guys. It's not the end of the world. You lose 3 guys, they lose 3 guys. Nah, whatever, right? But if you're willing to use AGA and Feel No Pain, you're only going to lose 1 to 2 guys. So again, even when they've got 4 rerolls, if it's just a squad of 5, as long as they don't have a shield captain, you should go for it. You should go for it. And this is why Wardens are very powerful in general. I really like Wardens because this is effectively like a free strat once per game that you can use, when you need it. It's a bit awkward because of you have to use it at the start of the phase, but in combat, it's not like in shooting where you don't know whether you're going to need it. You know you're going to need it when you're in melee. Can you charge 6 Wardens in a Blade Champion with 5 Guard and a Blade Champion if they have fight first, right? Now, obviously they've got slightly reduced damage output, but they're also more durable, right? So if you do it like this, yeah, you can shoot them, but you're not going to do very much to them. But when they fight first, they're going to do 10 wins to you. You're going to lose 3 guys, and you get to hit back with 2 spears in a BC. This should look pretty familiar to you. You kill 2 to 3 models because you should have done the chip damage from the shooting beforehand. But if they use Feel No Pain, which they probably will do, they're only going to lose 1 to 2 models. This is a bad trade for you, right? Basically can't charge Wardens with a unit of 5 guard. They might even resurrect a model, so you don't have OC, etc. Basically their Feel No Pain is as if they had done fight first and AGA. Not quite, but it's about that. Actually, it might be better than AGA. I mean, it matters a little bit on gives you opportunity to waste wounds actually, but it's better versus the Victus. So what if you charge with 9 to 10 brick of Guardians, right? So if you're double shooting, if they're saving on 2, you probably killed a model. If they're saving on 3, you probably killed 2 models, maybe even 3, right? So what happens is, they swing first. Let's say you lose 3 guys, right? Like, even if, like, it'd be hard for you to lose 3 guys after you double shoot, but let's say you lost 3 guys. Even if you lose 3 guys, you kill the 6 wardens. Still good. You're going to leave them with a leader, whatever, you don't care. You control that point. You can clean them up next turn. You can probably even wrap that leader that's left behind. Like, it's all good for you. If they feel no pain, they're losing 4 to 5 models, right? Instead of the whole squad. With or without the leader, maybe, right? They lose 4 to 5 models, it's still a good trade, right? You lose 3, they lose 4 to 5. You control the point. You might be able to wrap them. It's all still fine. What if they have a shield captain instead? What if we have a shield captain instead? So similar to before, you generally shouldn't charge units led with a shield captain without overwhelming force, right? And it's because in the first turn of Battle Round 2, you know, they can they can pop fight first for AGA again, and in the turn that they fought first, they can pop AGA. Particularly with Wardens, if they're fighting first, popping AGA and popping Feel No Pain, they can take basically near 0 casualties. But it's not that awful if you do it with a squad of 9 to 10 Guardians, because you'll do a lot of damage to them basically. If you have a shield captain with your 5 Guardians and they have 6 Wardens with a BC, their Feel No Pain still mitigates your swing back. So it's not, even though you have a shield captain and they don't, their Feel No Pain is too good basically. It's as if, you know, all things are the same because you're both taking half damage against each other, but they get to swing fast, so they just end up favourable in the trade. It's so favourable in the trade probably that even though they won't be able to use the Feel No Pain next turn, you know, they just outnumber you too much. They'll grind you down eventually. Can you charge 6 Wardens in a Blade champion with 5 Allarus if they have fight first? Now you get to shoot beforehand, so you're probably going to kill a guy. But if you can catch them on a 3-up, you might kill 2 guys. This is pretty important. So depending on how many guys you kill, let's say you just killed 1 guy, that's 5 guys with spears, you're going to take 5.2 unsaved, right? With the AGA, that's like 5.2 wounds. The Victor's Blade is going to do about 0.7 at 2 damage, so it's like 1.4. So you're going to lose about 6.6 wounds. You're going to lose a guy, you might even lose 2 guys, right? It just depends a bit on the variant here. And this is one of these cases where shooting fast is important, right? If you didn't kill a guy, you're more likely to lose 2 Allarus. If you lose 2 Allarus, you've only got 15 spears hitting back, whatever. With the shooting and the 3 guys hitting with all, you know, rerolling wounds, blah blah blah, you're going to kill about 3 models. This is okay. This is like 3 for 2, but you're not going to have a Vex, so they're going to control the point. So like it's like you're in this combat, but you're not flipping the objective, right? And if they've popped Feel No Pain, you're only going to kill 2 guys, but that's still not horrific. Still not horrific. If they only killed 1 guy, because you know, let's say you kill the guy in shooting with the Allarus, you know, you get 4 Allarus swinging, right? They're going to take 6.25 unsaved, right? That's like 3 guys in melee and 1 guy in shooting. You killed 4 guys. They're on what, like 1 Guardian and a leader, and you've got 4 Allarus alive, right? And you're gonna swing first. They're probably gonna have to disengage out of combat. That's kind of like giving you the point. That's pretty good. If they pop Feel No Pain, it's only 3 Wardens killed, but this is still fine. You're probably not going to control the point at this stage, but you know, you get priority activation. And thinking to the turn ahead on who gets priority, how many CP do they have, how much CP can they spend, how much do they want to spend on this combat in particular, especially if you have a bigger one that's more important somewhere else. These are all reasons to think about charging where it's kind of advantageous to you. What if your Allarus is not 5 Allarus, but what if it's 5 Allarus and a shield captain? Then yeah, just go for the charge, because this makes your shooting more reliable at killing a model. You might even kill 2 if you really high roll, right? and it leaves you with more models for the swing back, which makes the outcome of the trade even more favourable for you. So, you know, if you have 5 Allarus and a shield captain and you want to go into some Wardens, go for it. Go for it. Can you charge Wardens with Wardens? The answer is yes, as long as they don't have a shield captain or Trajann, right? So you can see, like, basically Blade champions suck at getting charged. So they're going to pop Feel No Pain and fight first, but you're going to pop AGA and Feel No Pain. So now you're going to take, like, basically quarter damage, right? The damage mitigation is so high that even though they hit first, they're going to kill, like, a guy, right? They're gonna do like 3 damage to you through the Feel No Pain. You're gonna hit back with 5 spears, right? And you're gonna do about 5 damage to them, right? But hopefully you've done like a wound or 2 to them beforehand, so you're probably gonna kill 2 models. Plus, next turn again, you've got priority activation. So you're probably in a favourable spot, and even if you're not, it's close enough that having priority activation makes this good. Can you charge 8 Guardians with your own 9 to 10 man squad, right? If their 8 Guardians are led by BC. Why do we pick 8 Guardians? We pick 8 Guardians because you get to double shoot beforehand, right? You probably get to do some incidental shooting with something else to chip them down. It just basically makes the math easier, right? So if 8 Spear Guardians and the BC get to fight first, but they don't get to pop Feel No Pain, they don't get to pop AGA, right? Assuming you've got 2 shields in your 9 brick, 9 or 10 brick, which almost certainly you do, because you're going to take the Vex with the shield and you're going to take the Sword and Shield, you're probably going to lose 4 guys if they're not re-rolling all wounds. And they shouldn't be re-rolling all wounds, because you should have shot some of their models off. Right, you've got a 9 to 10 brick, they've got a 9 to 10 brick, but you've got to shoot them first. So they shouldn't really have 4 rerolls. If they don't have 4 rerolls, you're probably going to lose 4 guys. Right, so you're going to kill all your shields first, then you're going to lose two spears. If they do somehow get 4 rerolls for whatever reason, you might lose 5 to 6 guys on the swings back. So that could be ugly. So what happens if you swing back with 4, 5, 6 shields plus your own Blade champion, right? If they've killed 6 guys, on your swing back, because they don't have AGA, you kill 4.5 models. It's not so good. It's not so good. But more likely, you're going to be left with 5 or 6 spears, plus your Blade champion swinging back at full damage, and you're going to kill 5 to 6 models, right? If you lose 5, if you've lost 4 and they've lost 5 or 6, and you get priority activation next turn, this is actually really good, right? So you can see, even when it's a squad of 9 or 10 with a Blade champion, you can charge it with your own 9 or 10, right? But it's important that you get the shots in first to whittle them down a little bit, because if you don't whittle them down a little bit, you know, it's a sliding scale, right? Because the more stuff that there is to strike first, the less stuff there is from your side that's left alive to strike at full damage, basically. So this might be really surprising that you can even charge big bricks, right? But this only really applies in turn 1, where you don't have the CP to fight first and AGA. If they are fighting first and AGAing, yes, you do not charge big bricks, right? Because these big bricks will hurt you. It's very, very hard to come favorably up the trade where they can fight first and AGA. But, you know, again, having the initiative for the next turn is important, because you're forcing them to disengage, you're forcing them to spend CP, or you're forcing them to commit another charge to turn that combat around for them. So yes, make sure you shoot them first. You know, if they're proudly in the open, you know, try and get them with the full rerolls with a bunch of stuff. Or try and get them with some other models so they can't fully allocate their attack. Some people are really lazy with their movement. Their models aren't basing each other, or they might be really spread out, so it leaves them in a way that even after they're piling, because they fight first, they don't get to allocate all their attacks. And even just getting 1 or 2 guys out of combat can be very big, because obviously the less damage you take, the more damage you do to them when you swing back. You still can't do this if they've got a 9 or 10 brick led by a shield captain, because again, they've got fight first and AGA, and that will hurt you. Similarly, if they're led by Trajann, that will also hurt you. And this isn't like Trajann doesn't allow them to do AGA, but it does allow them to fight first and swing 12 times, ignoring, you know, whatever stuff that you might want to do like AGA, right? That will, you can't deal with that. That would just crush you so hard. Even if you ignore the damage, even if you play Trajann as not going through the damage reduction for his squad, those 12 attacks, they will just kind of swing the balance. You'll take too much damage. Can you charge 5 Allarus into a 9 or 10 squad of Guardians led by a Blade Champion? No. It's the short answer. You're going to lose 3 to 4 guys, and you're just not going to have enough left, right, to make your attacks. Your unit has to have enough critical mass left after you get hit first to punch back really hard at full damage. Allarus don't cut it. It doesn't, like, even if you have a shield captain on top, it's not going to change anything really. You're probably just going to get wrapped, and bad stuff will happen. You're just feeding them a unit basically. Now, can you charge Wardens into 9 or 10 Guardians led by a Blade Champion? And the answer is, it depends, right? Your shooting's not going to do much, so you know, let's assume it's a 10-man squad. Could be a 9-man squad, but it doesn't really matter, because if you're popping AGA but not feel no pain, you're going to lose 5 to 6 Wardens, right? So let's say they're only a 9-man instead of a 10-man, like you lose 5 Wardens. They're still really awful, right? That's not going to cut it. But if you pop feel no pain and AGA, you're going to lose 3 Wardens. Now, if you have 3 Wardens left in the leader, it's again not really good. You might have priority activation, but it doesn't matter because that's not going to kill enough stuff, and they'll wipe you in your next turn. But what if you have 3 Wardens with Trajann? Now, if you have 3 Wardens with Trajann, you know, you got the 15 spears, you get 12.5 hits. You're going to win them on 3s, and you're going to get about 4 and a bit through, right? It's going to kill about a guy. But Trajann's 12 axe swings. You know, he's going to hit 10 times because he's going to be hitting on 2s basically. He's going to win 2/3 of them, and half of those are going to go to kill models basically. So there's about 5 models dead. It's not. I mean, it's kind of favourable because you've killed 5 models and they've killed 3, but you've had to pop your feel no pain, right? It's kind of messy here. Now, it's not the best thing in the world, it's not the worst thing in the world. So this is what I would call variable game state, because so many things can happen here that it's hard to say whether it's winning or losing. This is a good thing to do as part of a multi-charge, right? Like a Warden squad with Trajann attacking twice. He tags a bunch of models. Another squad attacks their squad of 10, probably like a Guardian unit, but they do it in a way so that not all the models that they want can allocate their attacks to your second Guardian squad that's attacking their big brick, right? This is what I'm talking about, basing models, making sure that they can't allocate the attacks exactly where they want to. So anyway, if it was just a one-on-one, you know, it's very variable because they could resurrect a guy, they could spend CP to fight first, like a lot of stuff can happen. You know, another charge could come in. But my point is, when you have Trajann with Wardens going into even a big brick, as long as it's not a shield captain or Trajann squad on their side, it's not even that bad. So any other tips and tricks in the mirror? Your Blade Champion can heroically intervene for free. So what's that mean? Somebody completes a charge within 6 inches, you get to roll a charge roll, and when you roll 6 or above, you make that charge, right? It doesn't count as a charge because it's in your opponent's turn. So that's free, but you can also fight fast here. So you can really, really screw them up. So if you have Blade Champions, you don't want them to receive the charge in general, right? I've shown you, you know, why you don't want Blade Champions to receive the charge. What they're really good at is sitting slightly behind your unit that might get charged and threatening the heroic. That threat of the heroic may mean that the unit in front of them just never gets charged to begin with because they're so scared of getting heroic and fight fast on their turn. Right? It's brutal. Be really, really mindful of your positioning and basing of your own models with each other. right? And declare that to your opponent, like this guy is basing this guy. And it means if you do get charged, you can allocate more attacks where you want to, instead of having them off by 0.1 of an inch, and they get based by something useless like Prosecutor, Exaction Squad, Rhino, Caladius, something like that, right? That's really annoying. And try not to get stuck behind stuff like containers, walls, etc. And again, concentrate on smashing your opponent instead of doing chip damage everywhere, because people can res models. But what you're really trying to do is hit certain breakpoints with your shooting so that you can actually initiate a charge that your opponent doesn't expect you to make, and come out favorably in the trade. So the summary takeaways: Blade Champions suck in the mirror, and you should basically use them to either make the charge themselves or threaten a heroic or even make a heroic, and then fight fast afterwards. You shouldn't really be using Blade Champions to absorb charges, because you can end up not favorable in the trade. Like, your opponent could be a bit stupid and just feed you units into your fight fast. Like, yes, that could happen, but that means you probably didn't need to be watching this video anyway, because you were just face rolling your opponent. You generally can't charge something that can fight fast and pop AGA. I think people knew that already. And as a result, shield champions, shield captains and Trajann units are awful to charge, because Trajann can either go for 12 attacks and fight first, super punishing, or he can use fight first in his ability and then spend his 2 CP to HK. So hopefully, that's a bit of a long video. Thanks for making it to the end. If you did like it, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. Leave a comment for the algorithm, etc. If you want to financially support the channel, I've got a link to my Patreon below, or you can join the YouTube channel. None of those things get you anything special. You get a little badge if you join the YouTube program. There's no secret Discord, there's no secret videos or anything like that. It's just to say, we want you to make more videos instead of doing something else with your spare time. Anyway, thanks very much, and we'll see you guys next time.